Welcome to another video in this short series where I am exploring JavaScript and how it is handling object-oriented programming. In this video, I'm going to walk through factory functions. If you haven't seen part 1, where I have the diagrams and I walk through some of the basics behind what JavaScript is doing for us behind the scenes, you might want to check that out. I'm going to take for granted that some of those things included in that video are assumptions here. But let's get going here. Alright, so here we have a plain object, party rock. We're using the object literal syntax. No problems here. Great. Everything looks good. We've got several properties, string, number value, a few functions which we know are just can be passed around like any other value in JavaScript. These are all of our property names in our diagram version of the same code. And everything's great. Well, let's say I'm a music executive and I've been raking in some profits off of my party rock object, but it's been a while since I have really made some good money off of this song. And you know, even like the revenue from all the workout videos and workout CDs are starting to dry up, and I need some fresh music. But I'd like to replicate the success of my my song that did so well for me. Well, you know what? Let's just take this. Let's just copy this and paste this into another hit song. All right, there we go. We've got another hit song on our hands. Lean On. We don't need to change the formula. Generic lyrics, fat beat, catchy hook, all these things are good. Oh wait, what's this? Oh, I forgot to change the date. 2011. Gosh, people probably would have noticed this if we released this song before. Alright, cool. Everything is changed. Well, this kind of introduces part of the problem when you want to have a lot of similar objects in JavaScript. We have two similar objects here. We can easily copy and paste one into the other, but that can be slow. Great, I've only got two songs here, but what happens when I need to, you know, crank out 100 hit songs and we have to copy and paste every single song object and change all the details? That can be prone to error. Well, luckily for me, JavaScript has an object creation pattern, and the factory object creation pattern, or just factory functions, is one of the ways that we can solve that problem. So let's go back and look at just our original hit song and turn this into a factory function. Okay, so now we have updated our hit song process, and we've streamlined it down to a single function, hit song, that returns an object. So you can see our curly brace, curly brace. This whole object is returned every time we call the hit song function, and we can pass in arguments like we do down here. So now our party rock object, instead of being created with just object literal syntax, we've used a factory function to create this object. Party rock is set to and assigned the return value of invoking our hit song function. We pass in the name and the date, and then we log our resulting object down here. It's as we expect. Well, that's great. Man, now I can just crank out the hit songs. So let's go ahead and create that other the next hit that we needed to keep the revenue flowing. Well, that was easy. Just a single line of code. Let lean on our next hit song equal the return value of invoking our function. Well, that's awesome. Now we can really crank them out. So this kind of shows some of the advantages of using a factory function. It's pretty easy just to look right at the code, understand what it's doing. It cuts down on duplicated code, so the drive principle, we're not repeating and copying and pasting our code over and over and over. And we can use this for as many songs as we want, 100 songs, 1,000 songs, and all of it is just boiled down to invoking our function. We can see we're logging the results of our two hit songs here. But let's talk about some of the disadvantages here, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up some of the schematics from the part 1 video, where we can see some of the connections that our hit songs, Party Rock and Lean On, have. Okay, so if you were with me for our part 1 video, this should look relatively familiar. We can see a diagram showing some of the relationships here. Let's go ahead and clean some of this up, and we can just focus on the parts that we need. Alright, so we have our two hit songs created by our hit song factory function, and we are just starting to get to talk about some of the disadvantages of using the factory function object creation pattern. And let's look at this code in order to do that. So we're going to look at Party Rock, and we're going to look at each of these properties. Generic lyrics, fat beat, catchy hook. Again, as a music executive, we know every hit song needs that. So our methods here that are generating that piece, they should be on our Party Rock song. Well, that's great. Okay, we look down at Lean On. It also has each of these. Well, as you build object on each object, you're going to have each their own unique instance. So even though generic lyrics are provided by this function on Party Rock, generic lyrics are also providing the same thing for Lean On, and however many other hit song objects you create out here. Each of them is going to have their own copy of this method. And as the number of objects you have grows larger and larger, and you're working with larger and larger programs, that can become a really unwieldy, redundant, memory intensive for whatever is running this code. So that is one of the disadvantages of using a factory function, is that each one has its own unique copy. We can see that all of these are true down here. All right, let's get to the next piece. So when we run these last two lines, we see we're getting the prototype of Party Rock, the prototype of Lean On. So remember that get prototype of is going to tell us where this hidden prototype reference on Party Rock or the hidden prototype reference on Lean On, where each of those is pointing to. And we can see that that's pointing to object.prototype. Well, that made sense when we were using object literal syntax. It's just a plain object there. But these objects came from this hit song factory function. So wouldn't it make sense that instead of our objects being connected up here to the object.prototype, that they would instead be connected to hit song? And you're right, that would be useful. That would be helpful to see that Party Rock and Lean On, our hit songs, came from our hit song function. But that's not the case. This relationship does not exist. Instead, we can see that the hidden prototype reference for each of these points back to the object prototype. Okay, well, maybe constructors, since these were constructed with hit song, right, our hit song factory function constructed these. Maybe the constructor property will point back to these. Okay, let's try that method. Okay, so the party rock dot constructor, lean on dot constructor. Maybe these things were constructed by the hit song function. We know that's true. We can see our two objects here were made by our hit song factory function, but JavaScript has this constructor pointing back to the function object, and that makes sense. If we remember back to the video part 1, there is no constructor property on Party Rock, on Lean On. So what does JavaScript do? It follows the hidden prototype reference to go find it. Okay, and this constructor is pointing back to this object function. And so those kind of two principles highlight the disadvantages of factory functions. That each object created by a factory function has a copy, their own unique copy of all the methods, and that's just, it's redundant, it can be intensive for memory, as each method is given its own location in memory. And then the second disadvantage is that there's just no way to tell these objects back to what we know created them. There's nothing to link it back to the hit song factory function. This would be even worse if, let's say, we had a pop song factory function, a rap song factory function, a rock song factory function. You have these factory functions, and each one has its own version of generic lyrics, fat beat, and catchy hook, but they're all slightly different. You know, rap, pop, rock, and then all you have is a song name and the date it's created. Then how do you lean it back? It could be any one of the hit song factory functions. So there's just nothing connecting back. Alright, so that pretty much highlights factory functions. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.